welcome again to all those colleagues who have recently joined us, because we met in the morning and now we meet again. And I'm very happy and welcome here in Ljubljana. But before I start my lecture, I have to thank, as always, our Slovenian research agency for two grants for two projects within we actually explore women writers, and the first one is Slovenian transformations of intimacy in the literary discourse of Slovenian Moderna, and the second is sexual desire in Slovenian women's writing from a transnational perspective. So now let's move to the lecture, and when I started this research, I asked two questions. I posed two questions to myself, and the first one was: have fin de siècle women writers in Central Europe contributed innovative representations of female sexual desire? And then the second one was why we are researching women's sexual desire in the modern period at all. So why exactly this period? Why is this period so interesting? And here we also have an image of Slovenian women writers from this period. To find the answers to these questions, let's move back to history, 128 years ago, to Vienna, to a city which was, at least at that time, maybe still, a city fused with sex, as one of the researchers of this period and this city put it. And let's do it with video. This is actually the oldest video recorded in Vienna. So let's made the most impression on him. So in his letter, you can see here Slovenian writers from this period. This is the so-called literary club, and as you have seen, I don't have such a photo of female women writers, so I had to do this collage because they never met in this way. So he wrote to his brother that he liked 𝐋𝐢𝐭𝐞𝐿 best. So he wrote false this name because actually the painter's name was Franz Stuck, and he was German. And this painting, the famous painting, has the title "The 𝐶𝐢𝐭𝐞𝐿" in German language, and he wrote that a beautiful woman with a huge snake coiled around her, he saw this her, and then continues, her eyebrows, when we look at her, go vekar, turned pale to the side, and Taylor said to me that evening that I was really under the ice for a whole hour afterwards. So, we can see this, this statement as a part of the discourse on sexuality, and I'm sure that you know the writings by Michel Foucault, who wrote extensively about sexuality in his works, and indeed in this period, in the 19th century, sex was everywhere. So in Vienna, the philosophers wrote about it. You have here the famous Otto Weininger, I'm sure you know him. Then, of course, the scientists, the scholars like Sigmund Freud, and also writers like Arthur Schnitzler, which is this man here. And it was not only in the writings or in the studies, it was also in the private documents, the so-called ego documents. People wrote about it in the diaries, in the letters, then also in journals, in newspapers, and also the talk about sexuality was heard in church confessionals, in the courtrooms, so sex was actually everywhere. And not only in words, but also on paintings. And if we look at the paintings from this period, we see that the depictions of women were really polarized between actually two types. One type was the so-called femme fatale, with her demonic beauty. The famous painting is, of course, by Gustav Klimt, Judith. But on the other side, there was this other type of femme fragile, which was inexperienced, innocent, and stylized into a hero femme fragile, as I said. And there was another, in the Austrian literature, there was another type, the so-called Kindfrau, or a child woman. So the artists who painted, who wrote about these women, they felt that they were breaking new grounds, they were very proud of themselves, they saw themselves as modernists. But as Karl Schorske, another scholar of this period, wrote, these cheerful explorers of Eros soon fell into the coils of so-called femme tentaculaire. So this is like Medusa, and the new freedom turned into a nightmare of anxiety. Furthermore, as another scholar wrote, sexuality became the symbolic territory on which the fundamental issues of the age were debated. So as we see, again, sexuality is everywhere. And what is also important, and I suggest, I propose to read this book about it by Tracy Matesic, what they succeeded that seemingly completely private, intimate matters of sexuality and also moral conscience, because we are in the Central Europe, Catholic countries, that they took them out of this private sphere and turned them into matters of public relevance. So what did this mean for women? This meant that this discourse, these images were everywhere, and this omnipresent discourse on male sexual desire, they were confronted with it. And as I'm sure that you know the famous book by Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex, of course. She put it, I think, very well. She wrote that they were cast in the role of the other, towards whom male sexual desire was directed. So about their sexual desire it was written, and when it was usually this destructive sexuality, destructive female sexuality, not just for men but also for women. And I'm sure that you read Miss Julie, by Strindberg, Ortega Gabler, all these women, femme fatale women that in the end are also unhappy, destroyed, whatever. And not only, as I said, writers, but also scientists, scholars wrote about women. And a very notorious book in this period was written by Richard von Krafft-Ebing. And here is just one quotation from this famous book, so that you can see what was the discourse that women were confronted with. So, among many other sentences, we can also read this one, that women are monogamous and men are polygamous, and therefore married women's love for other men is pathological. So, you see, all the blame is put on women. So if a woman is unhappy in her marriage, it is not because she was forced to marry a man she doesn't love. It is simply because she is sick, something is wrong with her. And this was, of course, not the only book. There have been many since, and I would just like to show you some quotes for another book, which was written in 1899. And as you can see, I was shocked to see that it was republished with this strange cover. And its title was on the physiological imbecility of women. And this was written by scientists, so it's not just, like a literary work. It was a serious work. It was perceived like a serious work, and women could read in this work that their typical characteristics are vanity, selfishness, talkativeness, that they are physically and mentally weak, and that they need a man with whom they connect or feel connected, and that they do not need freedom at all, because their only task is or should be the motherhood. So, well, as we can see, and I would like to draw your attention to this wonderful book, which has been published recently in spring this year. It is a new book which studies Vienna and sexuality in Vienna at the turn of the century. And Katja writes that love and sex were seen mutually exclusive, for women, of course, and that ideal woman was perceived as disembodied, detached from her physicality and senses. She was passive, frail, and discontinuous. And she also emphasizes that the marital home was the place of sacred love, while sex belonged to the street. And I think that here we can already see this distinction, about this connection actually between location and desire, that there are certain spaces, and you notice that also very well when you read this text by Zofia Feder, that it is different if the woman is in the nature or if she is in the town. And yes, women were then, of course, they felt this dichotomy of pure and impure woman, and as I said, location was very important. And here we have this woman in her bourgeois middle-class home, and you can also see this is a painting by a Slovenian painter, that she's not really happy. And then we have another image by a Chinese artist, which shows, of course, a prostitute in her nighttime conversation with a client. So women were confronted with these two images all the time. So how did they react to these images, to these depictions in literature, in art, everywhere? It is important, I think, that many more women reacted in this period than ever before. This was because in the social life major changes occurred, and many women entered the public life, and this was also because of different reasons. One of them is, of course, in the 19th century industrialization, so there were many working women who had to walk to their working place, to the factory alone, But also in the middle class there were major changes for women because the economical crisis in 1873 happened. And this meant also for middle class girls that the family could not support them anymore. So no unmarried sisters, no unmarried daughters could be provided by their fathers or brothers anymore. So they had to find their jobs, and also many new professions developed in this century. We have secretaries, we have female teachers, so this photo is actually is from Ljubljana. These are teachers, and then also many women started their studies. And this other photo is from Switzerland, these are students of the University of Bern. Where it was possible to study, because here in Vienna, in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, women could enter the university only later. But in Switzerland, if they passed the interview with the rector successfully, even if they didn't have their final exam, matura, and they couldn't have it because they couldn't go to the secondary schools or high schools, then they could study. So this is why they are so proud, I think, on this photo that they are students. So these new women were different, and slowly this new concept, this new type of a new woman developed. And to describe them in the simplest way, I would say that a new woman was financially independent and also sexually satisfied, but if she was lucky, of course. But at least financially independent, this was very important for women in this period. And you have some photos, one photo, this is of 𝐶𝐞𝐬𝐫𝐚, and you see how different she is. She has different clothes, she has this short hair and glasses, and then we have this self-portrait of a female painter who is very self-confident, and also a painting by a Croatian painter, 𝐒𝐢𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐚𝐥, and I just wanted to show you that not all male painters painted women in that way as I showed you. So also different images. And to be able to choose partner, the sexual partner freely, they need to support new concepts. And such a new concept was a concept of free love, which developed during the 19th century. And first it was actually the reaction, the confrontation with the ideology of the middle class. And again, middle class reacted to the ideas, to lose actually morals of the nobility. And so their ideas were fidelity, friendship, but not passion. And romantics then countered this with their ideas about passionate love as the highest commandment. And if you read Schlegel, his novel Lucinda, or Goethe's Wahlverwandtschaft, then you know what I'm speaking about. And it was not just German romantics, but also, of course, other groups who supported this idea of free love, this concept of free love. So very simply, it was sexual and emotional inclination, a free choice of a partner. This was important for this period. And not only, what they thought, it was also important for these women to distinguish themselves from the middle class women, from women from the bourgeoisie, and they rejected these conventional standards of femininity. And you see what was the ideal in this period. So this really very, very slim waist, and then they wanted to wear this so-called reform dresses, which are more comfortable, and or even dress in men's materials. So you have also a photo of the famous René Vivian, who is in men's clothes. So the body is something very important when we research and explore women writers of this period, sexuality in this period, and this is of course very tricky, you know. You read these articles about feminist phenomenology, so I don't have time to go into this now, but I'm sure that when you read it, it was obvious to you how important it is to have this whole picture, to avoid the risk of essentialism. So if you study women writers, then don't forget about all these writings that feminist phenomenology contributed. Of course, Simone de Beauvoir, and then don't forget, of course, Judith Butler, who, of course, then contributed much more complex views and findings. So let's move on, because I don't have much time. So then we can decide, would we like to explore women writers as persons, their own sexual desire, or their writings? And if we are interested in women writers, then I think that a very good approach could be the one of microhistory. I don't know if you know this approach from the cultural history. I propose that you read, if not, this very famous book with this funny title, The Cheese and the Worms, but it's a very good book. And Carlo Ginzburg studied in this book documents from the witchcraft trials, and then he wrote this study about this 16th century miller from the northern Italy, and he showed how peasant culture and high culture in pre-industrial Europe influence each other. So these documents are very important for the cultural history, not just history of things, but also ordinary people. And then, if you are interested in women, if you don't know this book yet, I also really advise you that you read this. This is Natalie Simon Davis, very famous, very important historian, and her book, Women on the Margins. This book includes 3 portraits of women from the 17th century, and she studied not just ego documents, their autobiographies, I don't know, documents, but also objects. So cultural history is interested actually in everything. Everything we can find is very important for this kind of studies. So, because you know, I explore this Slovenian woman, or multicultural actually, woman writer 𝐒𝐞𝐈𝐻. I'm also very happy because I found in the National Library actually the documents from the trial against her. So it is a very interesting, many documents where she had to prove that she was not a promiscuous person. So this was all about, so I cannot speak more about it, but just to show you that these documents exist. So you just perhaps have to go to the library and you can find them if you search for them, of course. But, of course, this is something about this trial. We don't have time now for this. And don't forget the letters. Darko will later in the evening talk about it, but here, to spark your interest perhaps, I just have a passage from 𝐒𝐞𝐈𝐻's letter where she writes about her relationship with her partner and later husband, and I think it is such a nice passage that I would like to read it to you. So this is what she wrote to her friend 𝐒𝐢𝐿𝐵𝐻 in year 1900. Sometimes I drive him absolutely wild. You know, I tie a red ribbon around my neck, fashion a delicate bow, and shape my head just so, letting my hair fall into a seductive tassel. Then I kiss him until he can hardly breathe. His eyes, his mouth, his face, his chest. He's so gorgeous, so irresistibly gorgeous. When I see him like that, naked and beautiful, young and fresh, something stirs within me, something sacred. He's so incredibly handsome, and I reveal myself to him all the more, showing how beautiful I am, how heated with passion, how everything within me bubbles and rises, how every vein vibrates. I can feel the light in my eyes, my untamed youth surging forth. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's like I'm flying on a wild Arabian horse under the glorious sun. I'm naked, and only the sun sees and kisses me. But I'm flying, flying. The sea glistens in the distance, white and wild, screaming its song. And I fly into it, laughing, squealing. Oh, that's how I feel when I love Buddha. But of course, we can also study literary text, and I decided to use the approach, the method of close reading for the study of 𝐒𝐤𝐵𝐻's works, especially episode which you read, to study the emotions in this story. And because you know, the emotions are something very subjective, close reading is actually always a little bit subjective. So this is why then I asked you to read it as well, so that I could compare this your findings and my findings. And what I found, especially, and as mentioned that already, how you notice these locations, how these locations are different. But of course, you wrote an interpretation of this text. But if you would, you know, write, I don't know, a seminar work or something like that, then you would also need some theoretical writings. And here, of course, the findings of feminist geography are very useful, and because you know these scholars, they explore relationships between social, gender, space, and gender politics, and watch what are the problems women are facing in different spaces. Here you have the most important, I would say, works from feminist geography, and also the recent one. I think that this should be a very good publication, A Space of Their Own. Of course, this title refers to Virginia Woolf's work, and it is also this period that we are, at least I am investigating. So I think that we should take a look, but not now because we don't have time. Obviously, women, locations, spaces, and even walking, because part of this story, as you remember, is Alma's walking from the place in the nature to the town. So women and walking, this is very interesting combination topic. And here again, I would like to draw your attention to another very important book in Croatian language, but most of you would understand it, I think, by Dubravka Zima, and she also highlights or defines different types of walkings, and she shows how unacceptable it was for a girl to walk unaccompanied, like Alma, you know. So this was something very bold, something very daring in this period. And now I would like to proceed to the second part of my lecture. I think that you agree that location is very important when exploring desire, and now I would like to show why digital humanities, these approaches are as well very important. So I mentioned before this project that now my research group is conveying. The acronym is the VONA, and here we are building a digital archive of articulations of female desire by Slovenian modernist women writers. And we are especially interested in emotions, because one of our colleagues, Ivana Zajc, explores this topic, so we are now all interested in emotions. And so I also did my research, my small project with 𝐒𝐞𝐱𝐮𝐴 writings. And I found as a very good inspiration for this project, a project done by Stanford Literary Lab by Branko Moretti, and it was called The Emotions of London. And the Stanford Literary Lab actually combined different approaches, different methods. So they asked students to read the text, and they asked also other people. So it was a kind of crowdsourcing project, and then they compared this to the findings of computational studies. So then they had these results. And of course, this was a very, very expensive project. I couldn't do nothing even similar to this, but it was very interesting to see how digital humanities can be used for such studies and research. So I constructed my hypothesis then, and I wanted to find out something about representations of female sexual desire in 𝐒𝐞𝐱𝐮𝐴's writings. And my hypothesis was that it was associated with negative emotions, because I collected her works, I edited her collected works, and I had this impression, and Alinka also wrote about trauma of the body, of the female body in 𝐒𝐱𝐿's writings. So I had this feeling that this is something very negative, that it is always connected to something negative. And then I also had these other research questions, and I just want to show you how important it is that you have these research questions before you start with your digital humanities project, because otherwise you don't get the answers. So I did it in a very, very simple way. I think you do it when we read a text. Then we usually write down some notes, some comments. But I think that it is very useful if you put them in a, let's say, Excel table. And so I did it. I defined my columns. I wanted to have, is it short prose, is it a novel, so that I collected all this data about the length of the text. Then is it let's say Slovenia, or perhaps United States, because this is also something very interesting, especially in 𝐒𝐻𝐿's writing, that often this desire is located not in her country, in Slovenia, but somewhere else. Then the spaces like street or home and so on. And then also if this desire was realized, not realized, partially, like I would say in the episode. And also sexual harassment, rape, it all appears in 𝐒𝐻𝐿's writings. And then I looked, I then had this list of works where sexual desire as a topic, as a representation appears, and I wanted to see how many texts are, you know, I have all her texts, I have a corpus of her works, And it were not so many, so just 57 out of almost 300. So I was a little bit surprised, because I would say it is much more. I had an impression that she writes all the time about love, also about desire, but not really. So this was something that this analysis showed. And then I also wanted to know how much in this corpus of these writings where sexual desire appears, how much is it where it is realized, not realized, how many texts with rapes. So, and here again, I was again surprised, because more than half of texts, their sexual desire is realized. So these women protagonists, they were actually bold women who realized their sexual desire. And another possibility which this table then gave me, and these visualizations were done by Mila Marinkovic, our colleague, the connections, you know, I was interested in sexual arousal and to which emotions it is related. And again, well, of course, love mostly, but also other emotions, like not so many negative again, I would say. So again, it relates to positive emotions. So happiness or even orgasm, so something that I wouldn't really expect. But of course also sadness, disappointment and other emotions. Then I could also see from this data the frequency of emotions, so to which kind of text loneliness relates, and so on. So this is everything this is possible if you collect data in a simple Excel table. And if you have Mila to do it, of course. But anyway, first you need this table. So without the table, other approaches are also possible, like word embeddings. You also have this text, this article, where we explored word embeddings in readers' writings, but this is another approach then, a little bit more perhaps complicated. And I also could, see which are most frequent literary spaces. So house, home, these are spaces where these stories take place with the topic or with the representations of sexual desire. And also about the protagonists, because there are, for example, only 2 working women. I wouldn't expect that, because Reader wrote about working women, but not in relation to their desire. So this is again something that surprised me. There are a lot of births, so I think this opens new possibilities for research of girlhood, walking, sexual desire, girlhood studies. So I think we can do something also with these methods. So my results, I would say that my results did not fully support my hypothesis, but I was not sad, because actually I think that this is a good starting point for a new close reading, because now I know which texts are interesting, which are not so interesting, and I can read them again with close reading method or any other. And I think that both methods, close reading, distant reading, were important, and somehow they confirmed my initial hypothesis that exploration, study of female sexual desire opens up a new perspective on the representations of sexual desire in modernity, and that Reader contributed important findings or writings to this period and corpus of texts. I would like to conclude with this quotation from another very good become a Cuban about this period, about Vienna. And yes, I would like to quote some sentences from this book. This is what she writes. Women's engagements with sexology enable them to rethink gender and sexuality in new, imaginative, and potentially empowering ways. Within their work, they were able to express ideas that were highly controversial at the time, including the claims that women had innate sexual needs, drives, and desires both for the opposite and the same sex. The gender identity exceeded a biologically arbitrary male-female binary and existed in numerous diverse combinations along the spectrum. That male heterosexuality was destructive and in desperate need of reform, and that women should have the right to control their own fertility. All of these ideas had implications for women's rights and social reform. Many of them have become widely accepted today. But not everywhere, not in all parts of the world, women have equal rights. So I'm so happy that a new generation is interested in feminist issues, that you are here in these summer schools, because I believe that together we can change something, we can do it, and I would like to thank you for your attention and for being here.
Thank you, Katja, for this wonderful talk.